Hi, I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark. Today we're going to be talking about the show Mr. Robot and some of the implications of the show.
I haven't seen it, so fill me in.
Sure, the first season just ended and the second season's coming up, so it's kind of a timely conversation. But in essence, the show is about a hacker and his friends, which are a bunch of hackers that are looking to bring justice into society. It centers around a company called E-Corp, also known as, or affectionately known as Evil Corporation. And it's a company that's modeled after, say, Enron, Goldman Sachs, GE, a combination of a different variety of companies that touches the consumer on many levels. So for example, E-Corp makes loans, auto loans, home loans, insurance loans, student loans, and the pervasiveness or the success of the company has left many people frustrated because there's so many people indebted to E-Corp. Primarily the millennials, which it focuses on, and primarily it focuses on the amount of student debt that some of these characters have. And so the point of these hackers is they're looking for a way to go into their servers and delete the records from the company. And the hope is by doing so, if you would delete all the records, you would basically get rid of all the debts for all the people. So it's
one way.
It's a noble cause. In their minds, it's a noble cause to free up everybody from their debts. And so that's the premise of the show. I don't want to give anything away.
Of course, okay.
But it's a really interesting show, and I know you've heard Glenn Beck talk about it. So,
I have.
I'd be curious to see what your thoughts were.
Well, my thoughts are outside of the show because I haven't seen it. As I said, you've filled me in a little. I've listened to some other people talk about it. I guess for me, what really is striking about what appears to be the theme of the show is that it so mirrors or reflects, same thing, I guess, what's really going on in the world today, which is the millennials. Not only are they in debt, in debt they'll never crawl out of, thanks to our national debt and unfunded liabilities and all of that, but also they're looking at the generations that came before and saying, you're all hypocrites because you're living a lie in the sense that you teach all these really good, or you talk all these really good values and business practices and what the laws are, but you're all living outside the law and you're all living in debt and you're all stressed out and no thank you. You know, I'll take Uber. I don't need an auto loan. Give me a 600 square foot apartment. I don't need a McMansion. They're reacting to everything that's actually going on. So a couple of thoughts. Number one, in the real world, the debt you can't forgive, the debt you can't get rid of is student debt and taxes. If you declare bankruptcy in this country, the two debts that are not dischargeable in bankruptcy are student loans and state and federal taxes. So what does that tell me? That tells me that ultimately you can never get the government off your back. You can never stop being indebted to. Therefore, you can never stop being enslaved by the government, because that's what debt is. Debt is enslavement. I personally was raised by a father who would only carry cash, and if he didn't have cash, he didn't have a credit card in his lifetime, because he believed it was indebtedness to a third party, and when you're indebted, you're not free. So, for example, you know, if you go back to ancient Egypt, this is as old as recorded humanity. The Israelites were enslaved to Pharaoh economically as well as psychologically. If you go back even further, if you look at Torah, if you look at Jewish history, Jewish religious history, the 50th year is called the Jubilee year. I'm sorry, every 7 years is a Jubilee year. What's a Jubilee year? In Judaism, all debts are forgiven in the 7th year. All debts. It didn't matter who owed you money. Come the 7th year, the land wasn't allowed to be tilled. Everyone was allowed to eat whatever was on the land. You let the land stay barren, fallow for a year.
Yeah.
And you had to forgive everyone who owed you a debt. The slate got clean. What does that really tell me? It tells me that if you're talking about God or a spiritual level, there was an intention for humanity not to be enslaved. because you couldn't keep anybody, you couldn't keep a slave, you couldn't keep someone indebted financially as a slave beyond 7 years. Look how ridiculous and how far we've come from that. We actually are not free. We are not a free people, because to the extent that we are indebted is the extent to which we are not free. You can lose your home, you can lose your car, you can lose every material thing you have to a third party. You were just giving me an example before we went on air about mortgage versus tax lien indebtedness. Talk about that for a minute.
So yeah, I mean, the dream of the American dream is home ownership, and it's sold everywhere as home ownership, as a ticket to the good life and as a ticket to freedom, owning your home free and clear. But even then, that's corrupted, because if for example you own a $500,000 house and the taxes, for example, are $10,000 a year. Let's just say you own the home free and clear. If you don't pay that $10,000 in taxes, the county clerk will then sell that tax lien because they want to get paid.
Well, they get an automatic lien.
They get an automatic lien, and then usually what they do is they sell that tax lien. So somebody will buy that $10,000 tax lien, and so the government gets paid. And why would somebody buy the tax lien? Because the tax lien pays double-digit returns, 10, 15, 20% returns. Now, if you don't pay that tax lien back, the person who bought that tax lien now takes priority over your house.
That's correct.
And if, for example, let's go back for a second. If, for example, that $500,000 house, you owe $200,000 to the bank, the tax lien holder would become senior to the mortgage. Even so, even if the debt is only $10,000, they're senior to the bank that owes $200,000. So what is that telling you? It's telling you that the government always comes first. You never fully own anything in your lifetime.
Okay, so everyone's really concerned right now. Everyone is concerned with our borders. We're concerned with foreign entities coming here to do harm. We're concerned and consumed with the 2016 election, the presidential election, Clinton versus Trump, Trump versus Clinton. In reality, I think what we should be concerned about is the amount of freedoms that we, A, don't even have to begin with, that we think we have, and B, the amount of freedoms that we're giving up in the hope that it will make us more secure against things like foreign agents or foreign enemies. So I think just right now this week there's a sit-in, isn't there not, in Congress?
That's correct, there's a sit-in.
And it's about gun control, right? It's about limiting more extensive gun background checks, limiting AR-15s, whatever else is on there. And what people don't realize is Orlando and other terrorist attacks are being used as an opportunity for people who want to even further enslave us. Because number one, if you don't really own anything, and then number two, if you have no means of protecting yourself against someone who wants to take away the little that you might actually have, if not ownership, let's just say in possession of food, personal items, jewelry, whatever that you might have, if you lose even your means to protect yourself, you're even further enslaved. So I personally think the biggest issue we have in this country is the illusion of freedom. The belief that we actually elect who our officials are. I don't think we do. I think that system is completely corrupted and obscured through layers and layers of deception and manipulation. The bigger issue is how do we reclaim autonomy? How do we reclaim our rights as individuals? Because if you go back to the founding of this country, the document says these are God-given, inalienable rights. They are not rights given by man to man. Our freedom, our autonomy, our free will, as it were, all of that is given us from a higher power. It's not given us from man. Civil law is really just a fence that we have tried to build around the worst of human behavior. But civil law won't change human nature. Only human nature will change human nature. So the desire to power over and enslave and be greedy and use other people as bots, in essence, use us as bots. Who was that author? Kiyosaki?
So Robert Kiyosaki has this, in his Rich Man, Poor Man series, he basically talks about people through...
Who is he? Wait, who is he?
He's a financial guru, kind of financial self-help type of guy. But essentially, His point is that if you go through the life cycle, you're born, you go to, for example, your first real decision is you get a car loan, and all of a sudden you're enslaved to that car company for a car loan. Then you have to go to college to get a to get a student loan. Now all of a sudden you have two loans attached to your name, and then as you go through the cycle, then you buy a house, and you now have another whatever called a suction cup to your body, to your pocket that you
sucking the life force out of you.
On top of that, then you get insurance for your family. Then you have Social Security, and then you have the money game where you have to save for your retirement. And all of a sudden, you're attached by 6 tubes sucking out money at all times from you. Essentially, what you are is a cow, a money cow, a vehicle of debt for all these entities. And the show, getting back to the show, touches on that, is that where is the freedom, or are we just vehicles of debt?
The Matrix touched on that
Exactly.
as well. And that is the reality. The reality is that, everything has to get energy from somewhere, right? And corporations, having gotten in bed with governments, have created like a super command post from which all of these feeds go out, and we are attached to both. It used to be just government, but now we're attached to business and government because they're in bed together.
That's correct.
And so the millennials are onto something. My concern with the millennials is that, and this may be too much for this show today, but my concern for the millennials is because both the Constitution and God have been demeaned to the point where the millennials are basically more nihilistic than they are anything else. What they see what's wrong. They get a Bernie Sanders telling them,
they understand the problem.
Yeah, they get the problem. They don't know a healthy solution because they're not grounded in anything. Everything that we were grounded in, that got us through the difficulties in prior generations, they don't have anymore. They weren't raised taught the Constitution and those principles, and they weren't raised taught religious and God-fearing principles for the most part. Maybe in their homes, but not in the culture at large, because it was taken out of the schools and the progressives took over educating the nation.
In the public domain, it's been removed.
And thank you. In the public domain, it has been removed. So and I think we should go there in future shows, Steve, is to try to talk about what life preserver can we throw the millennials that will help them hold on to something as forces around them want to reorganize them, because they are the ultimate suction end products, because they're like babes in the sense that they don't have any grounding and they know the whole system is corrupted, and they're going to follow in essence a Bernie Sanders or someone like him who comes up and says, I agree with you. I see how it is. Crony capitalism. Your answer is socialism. Your answer is some panacea, some all-knowing, all-curing, all-wise, and there is no such entity. There's no such political system. It has to start with you and me. Has to start with everybody unplugging from the greed, from the desire to keep up, from running in the race, even though there's no fun in it, there's no satisfaction in it. We all have to basically honest up with ourselves, with our children, with our friends, and say, I'm out of this game. I'm not playing by these rules anymore. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, I just want to end on this note because I think it is quite fascinating. I don't know if you're familiar with the small house movement, and there's a place here in town.
Yes, tiny homes they're called.
Tiny homes, and if you haven't followed it, take a look at it. There's a great show on HG, but really the brilliance of the show is they're making these tiny houses, and they're making them on wheels. And so by making it on wheels, they become independent. They are not beholden to city taxes, state taxes.
Wow.
They're not beholden to anybody. So you can own that house free and clear without a lien, without anything on it, because you own it outright. So the millennials have figured out a way to get around home ownership, but by owning a home at the same time, free and clear.
Wait a minute. There must be limitations on where they can park their house.
But those are the only limitations.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of places where you can park.
Well, you could, I guess, any RV park. You can also, because I just drove through one here in Texas, by the way, outside of Austin the other day. I was amazed. In my mind, coming from the Northeast corridor, I lived in Pennsylvania, New Jersey my whole life. I think of a trailer park as a trash place.
Yeah. It's not the case anymore.
There's this magnificent place not far from where I own a beautiful condo on the lake. There's right 5 minutes away. They have awnings and patio furniture out, and there's tiny houses there and RVs both.
That's correct. And those are all people that are not paying the government, so to speak. So
there are ways.
There are ways, and that's an interesting take that people have figured out.
And
so.
maybe we'll be able to give you some more ways and talk about some more of that. Send us any thoughts you have at abovethefraypodcast.com.
And just put some, if you like the videos, please post your comments and share it. So thank you very much.
I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark.
Have a great day.